Hello, friends, and welcome to the Powerful Podcast. I'm your host, AJ McCord. In this podcast, we introduce you to powerful women who are changing the game in and outside of their field of play. These are women's stories, women who happen to be doing things that many of us can only dream of, but the lessons and inspiration they share is universal. Welcome back to the Powerful Podcast. I'm your host, AJ McCord, and I could not be more thrilled to have the next woman joining us here today. She was the top scorer for Team USA in Rio. She was the first American woman to score a try in the Olympics. She has 1,000 points, 100 tries, the only American to have that kind of stat line, and she's the women's sevens center for rugby. Should have started with her position. But she was a dual sport NCAA athlete as well. So this woman is straight up athletic. She's going to be representing Team USA for women's sevens in Paris this summer. Welcome, Alev Kelter, to the Powerful Podcast. I'm so thrilled to have you on here.
Thank you, AJ. It's an honor to be on your show.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I have so many questions because it's so cool to talk to somebody who is so passionate about their sport, but also somebody who's just straight up an athlete. And that is really what you are, because I mentioned that you played soccer and hockey. We didn't get into the fact that you had a chance to play Team USA hockey back a few Olympic cycles ago. So I want to just start with Alev Kelter. Tell me a little bit of your life story, and I'll jump in with where I have so many aspects I want to dive into. But tell me a little bit first about just your life story. How would you describe what has defined your life?
I mean, I grew up as a military in a military family. My dad was Air Force. My mom was also Air Force, and we grew up moving around the country. I was born in Tampa. From Tampa to Florida. From Florida to Arkansas to Colorado to Alaska, and all before I was six. So I really, from 6 on, grew up in Alaska, and I call Alaska home. So Eagle River is where we grew up, and if you've ever been to Alaska, it is absolutely stunning. It is truly God's country. But for my entire childhood, it was play as many sports as you can, I think, to keep us out of trouble. And don't be afraid to take risks, to go explore, see what's, in Alaska, it's the land of the midnight sun. So you don't even sleep. You're out playing volleyball at midnight, you're starting hikes at, 11:30. So it's a huge playground where you can just experience, beauty, but also learn about yourself and the wilderness and the ruggedness of winter. And so I had that kind of as my formative years with my older brother, my twin sister, and my younger brother. So the four of us, my mom would say hooligans, but we were, just having fun as kids.
And, if you're not being described as a hooligan, then I don't think you're doing childhood right in Alaska.
Having two of me, we were pretty much troublemakers growing up, but sport kept us out of trouble, and we're grateful for that. But yeah, it was just an amazing childhood in Alaska, and building tree forts and bombing hills with rollerblades, and yeah, everything you could imagine,
Okay, so I want to get into your athletic journey once we get through this child in Alaska thing, because there's so many sort of questions. You touched on, I think everybody who grew up in the lower 48, right, probably has that stereotypical vision of what it's like to grow up in Alaska, but you're saying that it's the stereotype for the reason. That really was your childhood. Did you have any wild animals that were your pets? I mean, tell me some of your craziest Alaskan wilderness stories.
When we first moved up there, we were near Alpenglow Elementary School, which is near Eagle River, the actual river that flows into Chugiak. And I remember it had snowed 6 feet, and my dad was shoveling the driveway so we could get to our car to go to school. And I just remember not really seeing the top of him. And so we would make these tunnels up the back so we could, the hill was in our backyard, the school was in our backyard. So we ended up carving these tunnels to get out to the sidewalk to then go to school. And that just was an afternoon fun. And then one time in the summertime, I was checking the mail, and this cute black lab came up to me, and we have a whole family of black labs. My sister has 2, my mom has 1. They're all brothers. And anyway, this black lab came up to me, and I was like, I pet it on the head, and it just scurried up the hill. And I saw it scurry up the hill, and I thought, oh, that was really athletic lab. Like, what the? And it ended up being a black bear. And it was a black bear cub. And I was like, oh my gosh, I ran inside. My dad's like, stay inside. Where there's a cub, there's a mama. You don't want to run into that. And so that was my first ever, I think it was in 3rd grade, my first ever experience with a black bear. And I was like, wow, that was a really athletic, like it climbed the bluff like nothing. And I was like, oh my gosh.
You're like, wow, even the dogs are built different here in
Alaska. But it just kind of grazed my calf. And I was like, okay, like that's cute. Like here we are. But yeah, my mom was livid, but it was.
Oh my gosh!
And just a lot of like moose, and you learn about grizzly bear, you learn how to defend yourself, you learn about black bear, and then just a ton of fishing. Love to fly fish, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of experience with the wilderness in Alaska.
That is so amazing. I mean, this story about the black bear and the black lab mix-up is certainly going to live in infamy, but it is so cool to hear a childhood that is so nature-based and is so just rooted in adventure. And it really feels like that set the stage for the rest of your life, because you go on to have this great adventure in athletics that certainly had plenty of ups and downs. But what do you think is the thing from that childhood of growing up in Alaska, growing up outside, wrestling and messing around with your siblings in the great outdoors? What is the thing that has carried, like, what is the thread that has become a part of your life from that childhood?
I think it's teamwork. I mean, if I could put one thing that Alaska has built me on is to, be strong and not quit, because everybody up there is living, through the winters, is having an amazing time in the summertime. I think the winter sports, like being an athlete, is like the sun never really rises in the wintertime. And so you need something to keep your mind busy, to keep your body healthy and active. And a lot of people cross country ski, for me, it was ice hockey. And so when we came out from school, it was about 2:00, and then we'd go into ice hockey practice. And then by the time we were done, it was 4 or 5, which is a good time for the sun to be down. So you don't really notice that the sun hasn't really come up. But it's teamwork. And for me, I was blessed to have a twin sister, and her name's Daria. And we had this healthy competition between one another. And, we were this power, like, this superhuman, like she had a lot of the natural gifted brains, and I kind of had the natural gifted brawn, and together we were like, we could solve any problem in the world. And I remember having to work really hard at school, and I think vice versa with Daria with sport. But together we would be outside, doing corner kicks and header goals to one another, and just really pushing each other to the next limits. So yeah, I was blessed to have that, and then an older brother that instilled on us like his physicality and his ability to tackle anything. And that was before I played rugby. He played football and baseball, and we were his, every time we could go outside, we were his tackle dummies, and learning how to juke and be evasive, and then, be his second. He was a catcher, so we were his second baseman that he was throwing to, and coming in with chipped teeth, and we're like, okay, now we're gonna wear this hockey helmet when we're at second base. And so it was teamwork, and that's just like the ability to push past like an uncomfortable like ask, you want to do this? Sure, why not? Let's try it. And then work together to solve that problem, and then implement new skills and gain some confidence and just kind of being in Alaska.
Yeah, I mean, what a foundation to lay, because you talk a little bit about the athletic things that you guys were doing as a family. You became the first female at your high school, which is Chugiak, right?
Chugiak, yes.
Chugiak. First female to play on the Chugiak High School boys varsity team for soccer, correct?
Ice hockey.
Sorry, because soccer, you were the first girl from Alaska to be picked for the U14 ODP, right? The Olympic Development Program National Training Camp. So I'm getting your athletic accomplishments confused because there were so many of them growing up. You played soccer, you did ice hockey, and so far we haven't mentioned rugby, which is what we're going to the Olympics for in just a few weeks. But I want to talk about soccer and hockey and how those two sports sort of came to the forefront for you of the ones that you really felt like, hey, this is where I want to be. This is what I want to pursue. This is what I want to do in college even.
Absolutely. I mean, I think those were the two that I ended up settling down because I couldn't live without them. There were others that we played. I think at one point there were 6 different sports my mom and my dad were racing us to. And again, I think it was because they were like, we see them thriving and loving this. And also to, there's going to be one that stands out, that they just are so passionate about. And I think that everybody should try everything, and for us, it was softball, swimming, tennis, basketball, soccer, I don't even know, ice hockey. So there was a lot of different realms of athletics going on, and all of them combined made, at one point, which was like high school, that we decided, okay, we're going to just focus, instead of track and field and soccer and hockey and basketball, we're going to just do ice hockey in the wintertime and soccer in the spring. And those were the ones I couldn't live without. When I was playing soccer, I was like dreaming and daydreaming of hockey. And then when it's wintertime, I was like, oh, I can't wait for that fresh grass cut, which is only like 4 months in Alaska. Like it's mostly turf. Okay. So, you're playing with snow and snow berms in your peripheral. So, but it's, we went a lot. We had travel soccer. We played for Alaska Rush and Gold Strikers. And we traveled a lot to California. We traveled a lot to other states to get seen, to get scouted. And then also played on a boys hockey league. They didn't have a super competitive women's league yet in Alaska. And so that's why we played with the boys. And I think that helped a lot with, one, the lead up to rugby and the physicality of it, putting a shoulder in someone, and 2, because you can check in boys hockey, and 2, the speed of the game. You really had to be your head up and on a swivel, and your hands at a pace where you might not necessarily beat them with speed, but if you took the right angles and you played smarter and you had a faster pass, then you can beat anyone. So it really helped us at the collegiate level get seen.
So it's interesting to hear you talk about sort of the benefits of having to have played with the boys growing up, right? Because I was a gymnast growing up. That was sort of the sport. I played softball, I did soccer, I did volleyball, like I did, you name it, I probably played it at some point or another. But gymnastics was the one that for me really stuck out. Now, the unfortunate thing for gymnastics is that the shelf life is pretty short, right? And so by the time I was 16, it was kind of one of those, okay, you're not going to the Olympics. And so where do you want to, do you want to do it in college? And at that point, I was so burnt out because I had picked gymnastics earlier, maybe than some of the sports have to be picked, because I'd committed to it from 10 to 16 and it was 40 hours a week and all that jazz. But I say all that to say, in an individual sport, I didn't have that benefit of competing against the boys. But I still competed against the boys in things like sports knowledge, right? Like as soon as you say like, oh yeah, I love sports, I love watching football, I love watching X, Y, and Z. It's like, oh, really? Well, like, what do you know? Like who won this game in 1976 and who was the center? Da, da, da. You get quizzed. And it's always that, to me, actually, I think made me a better sports broadcaster, because that's what I grew up with, was like, I always got quizzed by the boys on sports knowledge. They were like, oh, you say you like it?
That was your edge. Yeah, that was your edge. And your
prove it. Right?
Yeah.
So what do you think, how do you think that you, like, what are some of the moments that you remember developing that edge when you were playing against the boys or with the boys in hockey and all of that?
Yeah, absolutely. It reminds me of a moment where my mom was fighting for us to be on the boys team. And she said, I keep seeing these boys coming out of school with the hard hat award. And I was like, yeah, that's a, it's culture based. It's whoever's the hardest worker on the ice gets the hard hat award. And she goes, how come you haven't had the hard hat award? And I was like, I'm I'm not certain. She's like, well, you're working hard? You know, my mom was always like, give me your RPE.
Yeah.
You know,
I was like, oh gosh.
after the game. And she's just so, you know, my mom is like absolute, you know, like just Tiger mom, like, let's go. And so she's like, you know, are you working hard? And I was like, yeah, no, I think that's a great question. I am working hard. She's like, well, you know, maybe next week you could, like, we can. And I said, you know, thought about it. And the whole car ride home, I'm like thinking about it. I'm like, you know, I'm like anne, which is mom in Turkish, because my mom's side's Turkish, my dad's side's Irish. So I said, anne, like, I think I'm not being seen to this award because I'm not in the locker room. And she's like, why are you not in the locker room? And I was like, well, the boys are undressing and, you know, they're like, whatever. And she's like, no, like, they can get their lower half on and then you can go in the locker room. And then part of the thing is that you need to be in the locker room to have the conversations, to be, you know, able to be seen for this award. And I was like, okay, well, what should I do? She's like, well, you go and ask the coach if you can be in the locker room. And I was like, okay. So we had this whole conversation. And, you know, of course, some parents were like up in arms about it. And it came down to the boys voting. They're like, yeah, I mean, obviously we can get our stuff dressed, you know, ourselves dressed. And we'd love if Kelter was in the locker room with us. And so, yeah, sure enough, it wasn't next week or the week after, but, you know, 3 weeks after that, I came home with the Hard Hat Award. And part of it was that they just hadn't thought about it because I wasn't in the locker room. And I remember that being, and it wasn't like I was in a different locker room. I was in a converted janitor's closet for just the women. And so
Sure.
It was like,
just the woman.
I think when I told my mom that, she was like, oh, that's not going to work out. And so for me, that was what I did at 4 a.m. when I had training before school with the boys team. And so I didn't know any different, and I didn't know the right way to ask or who to ask. But with that guidance, and then my mom's just tenacity to say, like, we'll figure it out, really sent a mental model for me to say, like, ask the hard questions. Yeah. And if you want something, go look for it and ask for it and push past that awkward conversation or that boundary and not be afraid of that. And for me, as a, you know, 15, 16-year-old, I didn't really know that was vulnerability. You know, I didn't know that was the hard conversations that needed to happen, and that needed to happen, and that I was maybe afraid of that, afraid of what would be said around it, afraid of the no. And that started to, you know, transition, like, okay, this is the risk, this is the reward. And now I'm seeing the outcome, which is, you know, equality, which is really beautiful.
Whoa. And I just got chills. and I think that, so when I started to, you know, be in the locker room, you really are a part of the conversations, you're a part of the team, and you're a part of leading that culture and leading those values. And once that happened, it was, I think even before that, I was already considered one, and I wouldn't say like one of the boys because it's very apparent, like we were all of us were like really best friends. But yes, in a sense, like I was part of the team. And that's what's really nice. Is like team isn't defined by gender, which is another thing that I'm really passionate about. It's about the common goal and the values you lead, and everyone having a part in those that really matters to the team. So yeah, I just think that story like really embodied that idea of like, there's a moment where we were challenged. There's a moment where we were had vulnerability and had those conversations, and this moment where the outcome and the success you could see come to fruition. Wow. Shout out to the mama too, because shout out to like, that like goes back to exactly what we're talking about, right? Like
always shout out to Layla.
Shout out to Layla. What did you call her in Turkish?
Oh, anne. It's
Anye.
like, it's spelled.
Shout out to Anye.
Yes.
Yeah, because I think that goes back to even like what we talked about, right? Is like mama looked at you and said, hey, something, who knows what was in her past, right? But I'm certain that she probably was of a generation that didn't even have the chance to, like, my mom was in a generation that didn't have a chance to play a lot of sports in high school, right? Like she was a cheerleader because that was one of the few things that she was allowed to do. Like that was one of the few sports offered for women. And so, right? So what did she become? She became a diehard football fan with her mom, who her mom wasn't playing sports at all in high school, but the two of them became diehard football fans. They've had season tickets to the Chargers in San Diego. That's how I learned my love of football, was from the women, right? And who knows what was in your mom's past, but she looked at you and said, hey, no. This is, my daughter gets better than this. Like I worked as hard as I did so my daughter could take the next step. And like, and that said, she gave you that.
100%. And that was from her mom. I mean, my grandma is also a Layla. There's 3 generations of Layla, and my twin's name is Daria Layla. So it is a very strong name. It means beginning of the night, and Alev means flame. So this night flame is going to ignite something, right? And so for me, Layla, my grandma, came over here from Turkey. She was set to marry the Turkish prime minister's son, and then ended up falling in love with my grandfather, who was a Turkish American interpreter for the Air Force. And so she was like, I'm not interested in this fixed marriage or this fixed relationship. I'm interested in love, in passion. And at the time in Turkey, that's unheard of. And so she was also, went over with her brother to England. She studied at the London School of Economics, and then was also playing tennis and modeling on the side. So like this Turkish woman was redefining what it means to be female and what it means to be that an athlete and a model, and falling in love, like at that time in those generations. And so and just to take it one step further, her mother was a teacher in a small southern town called Uluborlu in Turkey. And she was, when Ataturk was the prime minister and he was modernizing Turkey, she was the first to take off her veil and put a hat on. And all the women in the small Turkish town followed suit. And this is as it was being modernized, right? And the alphabet is being changed from Altai-European, like Arabic, to Latin, so women can have have an easier time reading and writing. And so this is like, she's an educator coming from an education like that was like, I'm going to send you to boarding school. You need to get educated. You follow your brother's footsteps. And so it's not unheard of that Layla stood up in that moment and said, no, my daughter will be educated and also will be fighting for her.
Equal.
And so, yes, we'll be equal. And how that is translating through sport in with our bodies is really beautiful, because my mom was a dancer, and she was like, I don't want my daughters to be in this, body specific, role, but I really want them to explore all the different sports, fall in love with what they're passionate about, with like my grandma, with her true loves, and really go for it and not be afraid. So that is the beginning, and this is kind of the middle way of that family of Laylas. Strong women.
This is the next step.
Yeah.
You are the next step in this generation of badass women.
Exactly. And you have to know those things to get inspired. You have to know where you come from, your why, and those are really important. And that when things get shitty or tough, excuse my language, like you have to come back to that basis. You have to come back to that basis of like, my grandma came here and is living her dream in Ohio on a farm, back to her southern roots. I'm just grateful. Honestly, it's humbling to talk about my grandma in a way. And she's 96 years old. And actually yesterday was her birthday, and she'll be headed to Paris. She's gonna come to Paris. We're gonna have everyone there. So anyway, it's just, I'm excited.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I need to see all the pictures of the family in Paris, because that's going to be an unreal moment for you guys as a family. I want to talk about, we'll get back to the sports stuff in a minute, but in the spirit of sort of this conversation, one of the things, we're coming off of Pride Month, and I mentioned, you are here living your truth, living your passion. That was not an easy one. Open love for you, because you go on to play at the University of Wisconsin. You played soccer, you played hockey, you were trying to make Team USA for hockey. And in the midst of all this, you realize a part of your identity that you didn't know before, or that you weren't maybe allowed to know before based on the way that you grow up. So tell me about how you started to live your truth as a young collegiate woman who came out as bi.
Yeah, absolutely. I was at Wisconsin, and before Wisconsin, actually this came around like when I was 12 years old. I made a pact. I was very religious. I grew up Catholic, and I think I jumped into Catholicism because there was a lot of, I wouldn't say like trauma, but it felt like as a 12, 13-year old, that's the word that best describes the distress as like a teen. Is there was a lot
Sure.
of things going on. And I remember like there was some like sexual abuse when I was younger. Don't quite really remember it, by like one of my brother's best friends, and having that hard conversation with my twin sister. She was also like, that's just normal, Lev. Like that happened. Like forget about it. What's going on? And she took the other way, which was like kind of avoidance. And for me, it was like, no, this is something that I really need to address within myself. And what does this say about me? And I went, Daria went, this is gonna kind of liberate me and open me up. And versus for me, I was like, oh, I need to be modest. Like I need to be like completely like all the way up. Like nobody's gonna touch me. And I think that turned into safety in religion. And I remember saying, I would pray a lot. I would go to like adoration, in the Catholic Church. You can stay from like adoring the Eucharist from like 12 a.m. to it's 24 hours. So you would relieve somebody. And so I remember signing myself up to be like on Friday nights where everyone's partying, I'm at the church. And I started to really pray, like this is kind of my calling. And so I at 12 said, Lord, I'm going to choose sport as my love. And then if you call me out of that into, apostolic celibacy, like a nun, then I will listen, and I'll follow you. And
Wow.
that was
Yeah.
me as young Alev. And I never dated, into college. I went to mass every single day at the University of Wisconsin. And I remember early in my junior year, and I had some amazing people. I mean, Father Nielsen was my spiritual director, and I would go to church, and then confession, and then adoration, and then training, and then school, and then sleep and repeat. And so there was no time to miss out on the parties or the whatever. And my sister was quite the opposite. Very, very liberal, very free, very doing her thing. And that was Daria, and that was Alev.
Did she go to Wisconsin with you?
She did as well. And she was there at Wisconsin with me. And so her name is Daria Layla, which is vast ocean, and flame. So we have fire and ice, really like very different. And I remember coming home, my beginning of my junior year, and coming downstairs, and I was attracted to my roommate, and she was studying for her grad school in engineering or whatever, something. Books were everywhere. And I remember just turning around, going straight to the confessional, to my spiritual director, and I was like, Father Nielsen, I really don't know what to do. And he's like, well, you need to move out. And I was like, okay. So I moved out, and I went to live with my friend Aaron Simon, and we had a beautiful friendship, and we talked through it, and we talked through the teachings of the Catholic Church. We talked through a lot of like anatomy and how what's going on, and then we read like a lot of spiritual reading on homosexuality and where it is, and concupiscence and original sin, and how that all like this came down to this sector of grave sin. And for me, this whole time, I remember being like, I don't believe I'm committing a grave sin. I don't believe that God, this God that I love, that I've made a pact to, that has led me into a beautiful, like, Division I ice hockey, Division I soccer, just a lot of amazing firsts, that is going to say, I don't love you, and for this moment. And so I started to pull away a little bit, and I started to really have some internal turmoil about what is the side that God loves and what is the side that God doesn't love. And then I realized, okay, like, I need to find that love in myself, and I need to redefine what that love means, and then actively participate in loving myself again. And that was struggle, AJ. Like, that was, I really didn't know who I was in those moments, because there was so much confusion about sexuality and about sin and about, and I just remember, like, the Father Nielsen said to me, he was very prophetic in the moment. I was very open with him, and he was very open with me about this. He's like, if you aren't sorry for this, then you can't come to confession. It works as in, like, you're contrite in the sin if you are sorry.
You have to be sorry for the sin in order to 100%.
He's like, you're just going through the motions in a way. He's like,
right.
and it was like, in really, like, an honest, like, don't be lukewarm. Like, and I thought that was really beautiful, because to me it was like, and he never stopped loving me. Like, he never did. Like, and so for me to see that, I was like, this is actual, what I've been, like, the spiritual, like, teachings that I've been seeing. I'm seeing this in Father Nielsen. Like, he's, like, very honest with me about it. And I started, okay, so I had to pull myself. I really didn't want to create. I was teaching, I was teaching spiritual direction. I was teaching these classes, in Milwaukee, and I really didn't want to create, like, this scandal where, as a teacher, as a Catholic teacher, that I was, also. And so I really pulled myself out of it, because I was like, before I figure all this out, I need to do it correctly, and whatever correctly was at that time was, pulling away to then find myself, to then come back and say, I am gay, and I do have these inclinations towards women, and I don't think that that's a sin, and I do think that God loves you even if you have those inclinations, and whether they're from birth or they're learned, or it's nurture, nature, it doesn't matter. Like, you can have that relationship and still be, for me, you can still be Catholic, and you can still love, and it was like everything from wanting to be a saint to being crushed to, like, it's like, it was all this in my heart, like, just this ball of question. And also too, like, I pulled away from the church because I thought the institutionalized side of it was very black and white. And quite frankly, like, I learned that my colors were rainbow, and it's like, you use all the colors to mix, that flag, and you use all the colors to live your life. And that's what freedom is to being your color, and to live it vibrantly, and to live it passionately, and not be afraid. And so for me, that was what I learned. And then I started to repaint my life with those colors. And I started to dive into, I got an art degree, and I started to understand what, like, expressionistic, art meant, and then, like, what, and you just start to live it. And then sport became a performance art, and it's like, now I'm in my medium, I'm living my dream, I'm creating this canvas of movements, of pace, of, manipulating defenders in space. And it becomes then a dance. It becomes then a glorified, like, dance that then becomes entertainment, that then can lead to inspire people to be themselves. So I'm grateful to have this conversation with you. And I'm also like, it takes some time to realize who you are and what you want, but and to be gentle with yourself is what I learned in that process. But yeah, I'll stop for a second, because That was a
No,
lot.
all the people said amen. Like, that's all I had to say after that is like, you have
Now I'm sweating.
Yeah. Well, you are, that vulnerability is such strength, and it is so beautiful because it is one of those processes that, especially for kids who grew up in the church, right? Like, there's a concern that what you have been taught and then what you know to be true about yourself are not compatible, that you have to choose yourself or you have to choose God. And the more people like yourself who come out and say, that is not true, I don't believe that to be the case,
Right.
the more people you are helping show the way to freedom. Like, the more people you are saying, hey, this is how I navigated it. And it is not hard. It is not easy. It is not simple. It is not straightforward, but you are not alone. Like, that is it. That's all that matters. And I mean, we'll get to the irony of you describing rugby as a dance, because my gosh, it's the most violent dance I've ever seen. But to hear you say that even the way you play sport is a way for you to live out your true color, like, Alev, that is life-changing for someone to understand that is possible. Like, you are powerful. Like, you are it. This is it. You are defining that for us right now. And it's so beautiful. And I'm so grateful that you're willing to open up and share this, because I can only imagine the people who hear this that are going to, like, all of you who are listening, I hope you let this sink in, because I know I'm going to come back and listen to this multiple times over and over again, because I think you touched on so many things, and I want to just let that sit where it is, because you did it beautifully. No further questions. I just want to say, like, all the people said amen to that journey, and you sharing it with us. So thank you for doing that. Yeah, I guess we will switch gears, because I do want to talk about rugby and the vibrant color that you are on the field, and the fact that you're going to Paris and that you're becoming this 2-time Olympian with the women's sevens team, which has some amazing characters on it, by the way. Some of your teammates are simply my favorite follows on Instagram and TikTok. And I know Alona is the first one who comes to mind. So if you don't follow the women's rugby sevens, you got to do it. It's the best. So I guess give us so all of this is happening. You're figuring out who you are. You're just discovering, I guess is a better way to put it, discovering your freedom and your sexuality, all while you're thinking, hey, yeah, I'm absolutely going to represent Team USA, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to do it in hockey because that's what you were really, really good at in college as well. So you didn't make the team for Team USA in Sochi for 2014, right? To make the US hockey team. So walk me through then how that disappointment propelled you into finding rugby.
Yeah. So shortly after this whole find of the spirituality mixed with life, I took a toll on my academics and also took a toll on my athletics, and I think that was a way for me to cry for help.
Understandably,
Understandably. And I remember my art teacher coming and saying, I'm going to have to fail you in this because simply you missed a lot of school. And I said, I 100% agree with you. And she goes, and I also have to ask, like, are you okay? And that was the first person that had asked, are you okay? And I was like, I will get back to you, because I was very strong in this moment, like, and I could, pray anything away. And I came back and said, I think I do need help. I think I do need a little period of time to come back, like after, and maybe retake this course. And she was like, absolutely. Obviously we love you here. And it's I chose art also is like, it's a cohort. There's 26 people in your group, it's very intimate. And yeah, so I also saw that side of, coming, I used alcohol as a mask, and some, habits that became unhealthy. And a lot of that revolved around, drinking. I remember coming to to practice a little tipsy once. And it's just like things that were just very much like not on par with how I wanted to live my values and my life in those moments. And so I think that carried out into this Olympic, that was like the beginning of this Olympic quad that pushed into really thinking about myself as a statistic instead of myself as a Lev, and my values and, what I, inspiring people and being a role model and things like that. And so I fell into this, I'm not certain how to fully ask for help and need help, but this is me at my best trying. And unfortunately, that wasn't enough, and I didn't have the answers that people were asking, like, why weren't you here? What's going on? Like, why were you late? And for me, it was, I understood it because I was experiencing it, but I really didn't have the words to express those emotions. And that led to, my beautiful entrance into therapy, into asking for help, and to learning how, not necessarily to ask for help, but learning how to talk about my emotions and talk about what I needed. And for me, it was a break. And that break fully happened after I wasn't selected. And just to give some hindsight, I had played, Division I ice hockey and soccer, had been in the US U23 national ODP platform for US soccer and for the full national team for ice hockey. So I was on the soccer team when Jill Ellis was the coach, and they said, hey, we're going to need you to focus just on soccer and not hockey, solely, like just pick one or the other. And they were my loves, and I couldn't pick just one or the other. And so I ended up, declining that opportunity to continue with soccer because I loved hockey. And I thought hockey could give, in that time, I believed that I had a chance of making that Olympic team. And so I put all my eggs in one basket and really went for it my 5th year and fell short. And I remember saying, like, I wish I could have done things differently at the end of it. And that I wish haunted me. And I felt like a failure. And it wasn't like it was, listed on a list, but it was basically, I didn't make that residency squad that then goes for a year. And then they play at the end of that year in Sochi in 2014. And so I felt like the biggest failure, and not just because I was trying to find myself or really confused, but just in general as sport. Let's go like just as sport. As I felt like I failed my mom, who took me to practice. I felt like that's 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. drove me all around, from Alaska to Fairbanks, which is an 8-hour drive to and from on the weekends, in between work hours. And all the, hockey's and soccer is very expensive, especially if you have 2 kids in it. And, just a lot of time and effort spent felt like it was wasted. And I remember going home to Alaska as this is the break I really needed. And I went to Alyeska, which is our beautiful, ski resort, and grabbed my snowboard and went up the gondola. And my twin Daria, she was still at school, and I just remember being like, I'm no longer on contract to play college sports. I just didn't make the Olympic team. I'm really struggling with my sexuality and who I am, and I think I'm going to snowboard this mountain, with abandon. I'm going to hit every jump, try everything, and it was probably a sense of like, I'm trying to feel some adrenaline. I'm trying to feel something because I had been so numbed to the fact that failure was like taking me.
Well, your body was like in protection mode. It was saying, I can't feel because it's too much. If I feel this much, it will not end well for me.
Yes. And as I started to see myself really address who I really was, I saw that failure come to light. Then I was like, maybe I need to continue to, stuff it or hide it or something. Anyway, it was, and that's where I realized, like, I started this run, and I did this backflip. I completely biffed it. And thank God it was fresh powder, but like I'm upside down, just like think about like me upside down in like 4 feet of snow, and my snowboard's out and my head's in the snow, and I just thought I could stay here. And
Oh,
and that was so real. I could stay here, and I don't need to get up right now. And then yeah, it was that to me was like the moment I started to realize like I'm not okay.
yeah.
And I started to think this could be it. Like I could stay here and this could be it. And then I had this like really epiphany, and it was really beautiful moment, probably like slightly hypothermic moment that I was I was thinking about Daria, about my twin. And it was like a very real flashback of like our birth, which I don't remember, but this is the moment.
Yeah.
Is we were with each other. We were roommates for 9 months, and we at the last minute. So I was set to come out first, and then she flipped feet first, and really dangerous. And my mom had to have a C-section, and so she came out first, and forever will be the older twin. And and in my moment of that, as every time someone asks who's older, they're always, I'm a little bit bigger than Daria, and so it would be like, oh, Alev, and then Daria would have this moment of correction, and she'd feel very satisfied in this moment, and that was hers.
Yeah.
And for me, I never ever thought like that was me, like lesser than, like as a less than. That I came out second, and I'm no less of a human because I came out second.
Right.
And so that made a lot of sense to me, is like that was something I could not control.
Yeah.
I could not control that. And so why after this no of not making the Olympic team, how I am feeling, and this is where this like epiphany is coming in, is like, why am I feeling like I'm a lesser human, like that I failed, that I couldn't control that.
Yeah.
And part of it was attached to the if I had been more confident in who I am, if I had been confident in my sexuality, if I'd done this, like these are the things that I wish I would have done, I could have controlled that. And in my mind, I attributed it to, Alev, you're no less of a human because of that no. You're no less of a human because you came out second in the womb. And that got me up.
Yeah.
AJ, that got me off my ass in the freezing snow and down, and like slowly made my way to the lodge. And I'm not kidding you, that saved my life. That moment saved my life. And I remember getting some medical attention in the at the lodge in Balieska, and listening to my phone. I had some voicemails on my phone. Everyone was like, where the hell are you?
Yeah.
And I had a missed call from this gentleman named Rick Suggett. And this is like not kidding you, the same day. And that phone call was like, hey, this is Rick Suggett from USA Rugby. I'm the Olympic coach, and was wondering if you're interested in trying rugby. If you are, and this is the right number, please call me back. And at first I thought it was my twin sister playing a prank on me, because she was like, I just want to cheer her up, like let's figure it out. And I ended up calling my mom, because I was like, hey, what do you think about rugby? And would you let your daughter play rugby? And not that I need my mom's opinion, but she is Alev Kelter, and I would love her support.
Yes, one wants a mama's blessing.
And also need that, and at this moment, and maybe some guidance on, is this something that I should follow up on? And she was like, Alev, like, what's the worst they can say to you? No? And I was like, yeah. What is the worst?
Yeah, Mom, that's actually it.
and that started the journey. Is like she said, don't be afraid. Like the worst is already, like they've already said no. Like you've already heard that. You
Yeah.
are slowly working your way through that. And with no strings attached, I flew out to California. I talked to Rick. He said, I know he's a Canadian, hockey player as well, and converted to CFL football and then to rugby. And he said, I know you're a hockey player. You might have a few loose screws. And I said, I'll take that. And, but I have to have a confession. I've never touched any rugby balls in my life.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, we have plenty here. So I'll see you in 2 weeks. And I'll see you in 2 weeks. And just let me know after 5 days if you like rugby, and we'll go from there. And just no strings attached. And I think it was the perfect thing for me in that moment to fly down to sunny San Diego, to be welcomed with the biggest arms you could imagine. And I didn't know that was the rugby way. So for me, that coming from, you could sneeze wrong in other national teams I played for and be gone, to, being pulled down for other people to be pulled up, and then coming and saying like, hey, this is how you tackle. This is how you pass. I don't want you getting knocked out, so please go cheek to cheek. This hip is really bony. There's like little things like that. And it was all player led. Obviously the coach was out there, Rick was out there, leading some of the drills, but mostly was out there with his camera, just enjoying the moments, because that's how he led, is he wanted the players to be inspirations and to empower each other and to also help each other, because if we all helped each other, we would be better. Yeah. And that is what I wanted to be around. And that, like, those strong women who could hit each other at full pace and then turn around and laugh and have a drink with each other and sing and, just be kind to one another. I wanted that to be my athletic experience moving forward. And
it was your team again. It was the team you grew up with. It was like the team of
teamwork,
siblings.
Yeah. Yep.
It was like you could.
It was like wrestling and it's hard, and I'm your tackle dummy, and it was in a way familiar, exactly. Back to where young Alev kind of found her confidence, and so I rebuilt that, and I remember being in the med room, and one of our teammates, Liz Sowers at the time, she's we had a probably not super PC now, but we had a gay house and a straight house. And it was just comfortable that way. And they said, gay or straight. And I stuttered, like I didn't say it. And Liz said gay. And I looked at her, smiled, and that was it. That was it. And I just remember living, with my teammates and being fully included. And like, that's one thing about rugby, is that it's inclusive, and that you need every shape and size, and that, it doesn't matter your gender. Like, it's so beautiful, and doesn't matter who you love. Like, it's so absolutely beautiful the way that this team and rugby in general, and the ethos of the game of respect, of camaraderie, of integrity, like that actually plays out in life, not just on the field. So I was really called to it. Yeah.
And it seems like it was, I mean, like, how validating, after everything that you went through, after all the hard, where you said, I know that I can be all these things, right? Like, I know that my story can be made up of all these vibrant colors, but it was like everywhere was telling you had to pick these ones or this one. Yeah. And then you find this team that says, nope, every single color. That's who belongs
and
here.
We see you and love you. And
exactly.
And like, that wasn't, I would say, like, it wasn't my athletic ability,
right, that
led them to loving me. You know what I mean? That I had to prove myself through sport, to earn respect. It was inherent. Like, I love you because you want to try, and that you love rugby, and that for you, like, for Alev Kelter. And I was so, like, grateful, just, honored to be a part of a team, that had that mentality and that wanted to be better each day for each other. And and that's why I stayed. And that's why it's been almost over a decade of playing at Chula Vista, the first place I ever set foot on and touched a rugby ball in 2014. And then 2 short years later, had the dream of playing in first ever, sevens rugby in the Olympics in Rio, and scoring that first try and doing that. So it's a testament to those women that came before me: Jillian Potter, Vix Falayan, Christine Ringenborg, Hannah Lockwood. The list goes on. And also to Rick Suggett, who has passed away since then, but who lives vibrantly through all of us and our values. And there's one more person I want to mention in this, is that Lori Clifford. She was a flag football teammate of mine in high school. And we said, as a pact in high school, if flag football ever is in the Olympics, we're going to go. And we said, she called me. She went to play basketball, I think at Western Oregon, and I played Wisconsin ice hockey and soccer. And she texted me, she Facebook it messaged me and said, "Hey, I'm playing sevens rugby. It's very similar to flag football. You got to get your ass over here and play. Can I give Rick your number?" And I said yes. And I think that's who mentioned me and my twin to Rick at the time.
Wow.
And so that is the beginning, is Lori. And I'll forever be grateful for Lori and her selflessness and the team's selflessness to teach me everything that they knew, knowing that I might take their spot, and still loved me through that. And I think that's what teamwork is. And that's what it means to be a high woman, which is our values. And that's what it means to be a rugby player.
It's, if you didn't have a reason already to root for the Rugby Sevens team, we've given you so many. This is beautiful. This is teamwork. This is sisterhood. This is strength. This is all of it. And Alev, I feel like I have gotten a chance to just sort of, the beautiful thing about love and community is that even like the best of them, right? The best love, the best community, the most pure, you just have to be in its vicinity to feel it, right? Like I am not going to ever play rugby sevens in the Olympics, but I feel that love from your community just through talking to you, because it is so pure. It is so honoring of each person's individual beauty. And I have zero doubt that we will all feel that when we watch you play, when we root you guys on in Paris in a few weeks. And I could not be more grateful for you opening up those doors, both to who you are as a person and to the community, the beautiful community that you are a part of, both in your family, in your sexuality, in your team. I feel like you've opened the doors and shown us this light, and we can embrace it. We can bask in it, and we can see what it's like and take it back to our own individual communities. And I think that's another community, like we're creating a community right here in this moment that we can say, this is what it is. And I'm just so grateful. I'm honored to be here. I've heard so much also about you, and you're phenomenal. So honestly, these stories don't come out just because, you definitely pulled them out of me. And I'm just so grateful that I'm honored. Thank you. As am I. Wow. Okay. We have to move on to the Something to Sip On segment. It's brought to you by the Sports Bra. It is our women's sports bar in Portland, Oregon. Who that crowd, I can imagine at 11 a.m. on the Sunday that your episode airs, is just going to be going crazy. I want to be there to see it. But they're going to be enjoying a cocktail in your honor, Miss Alev Kelter. And I want to know, what is your Something to Sip On? What are you enjoying, embracing after a beautiful day on the rugby field, a beautiful day in my hometown of San Diego? What are you sipping on?
Okay, so there's two parts to this. There's Alev prior to this who prior to her sober years. So there's a sober Alev, and then there's now.
We have cocktail and mocktail. So pick your choice. Yeah.
And so prior to my sober, I really loved whiskey, definitely whiskey, anything whiskey. So a whiskey sour with egg white is probably a go-to. I mean, I really would just do whiskey on the rocks, but if it's other people coming, not just Alev, then I think the whiskey sour with the egg white is great. But if you do just like whiskey on the rocks, like just one little circle cube with some really good, Lafroig, peaty whiskey, that's it. And then the sober Lev is, and I'm actually, let's see, a little over, I think 1,000 days sober.
Congratulations.
So yeah, I haven't checked, but I mean, it's like day to day, right? So, and just keep saying yes and keep coming back, my friends. But they sober Lev used yerba mate, like mate tea.
Yeah.
A very South American, Argentinian drink, and to help kind of wean off the alcohol.
Okay, so now we're gonna go into our powered up segment, which is our rapid fire questions. I don't have a lot of faith in us that we can do this rapidly, but we're going to try.
I can do it. We can do it.
Come okay. Well, I think I'm gonna get distracted because I'm gonna have too many questions.
But we're ready.
Okay, here we go. We can do this. You kind of already answered this. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Okay. Favorite ice cream flavor?
Cookie dough.
Ooh, good one. Go-to meal before or after playing rugby?
Ooh, Crack Shack fried chicken sandwich with sweet potato fries.
Yum. Yum. Oh, okay. What is a favorite place your sport has taken you? Now, you have played 3 sports at an extremely high level, so feel free to choose any of them, but I would specifically love to know about rugby.
Absolutely. Okay. I love playing at the World Cup in New Zealand.
Oh, love New Zealand. What were you in? It's stunning. What city were you?
Whangarei, and it's of Auckland. Yeah.
I love New Zealand. Yeah, see, so I won't get distracted.
Also go to the South Island too. Also, the South Island's beautiful as well. But
I spent 14 days in New Zealand, and we did half and half south, half north. And I was like, how do I move here? Because it really felt, you know what it felt like? San Diego. It felt like all of San Diego. Yeah, exactly. It was like ocean mountains in close proximity.
Yes.
I loved it.
I always think that's where I want to live. Where the mountains meet the water.
Amen. Get that tattooed on my soul. Okay. If you were not a rugby player, what sport? I mean, gosh, we could again choose your poison. This doesn't have to be one that you actually were close at making the Olympics in, but if you weren't a rugby player, what sport would you want to be an Olympian in?
Surfing.
Yeah, that's my okay. Favorite dessert?
Favorite dessert. Let's see. Okay, carrot cake. Carrot cake. My mom makes a really good strawberry cake, but
shout out mama. Okay. Dream vacation spot.
Yeah, Alaska.
Okay, that's very fair. I love Alaska. It's so beautiful.
I'm on the Kenai fishing. There you go.
Oh, so fun. What is the best piece of advice you have ever gotten?
It's probably from my grandma, and she said to follow your passions and not be afraid of taking risks and loving fully. All
right, the wildest mishap you've ever had playing rugby?
I would say, just to give a caveat before I share a little bit about my injury, it's very safe. The sport is very safe. You learn how to use momentum to tackle, and so you're not like American football where you're hitting with your head. You're using your shoulders and momentum, and it's very safe. You learn techniques to make sure you fight concussions where your neck is really strong. And yeah, I think actually I'm just going to say that and not say my injury. So
okay.
it was very there's a couple injuries that I've had, but rugby is very safe. And I'm going to pivot really quick with that. Sometimes in rugby, that you have very tight clothing on, and you're highly encouraged to wear spandex for this reason. But yes, my spandex and my pants were pulled down in a tackle, and everyone got to witness my very white ass. And it was more, and actually it was Sarah Goss. After I had scored a try, I had in Barrett's, and she landed on top of me and then gracefully also pulled my pants up. So
sisterhood at its finest.
And I love her, and she is a beautiful friend of mine. So shout out to Sarah, Harini now married, but for doing that. And I think some people were blinded because this ass has not seen the sun in a long time. So
well, I'm in Alaska. It's just not. It's It is. Although, as a San Diegan, I would like to adopt you. I would like to adopt you as a San Diegan also.
Thank you.
Okay, and then the last question for you, my dear Alev Kelter, is what does powerful mean to you?
Powerful means to me that you're not afraid of the no's or yeses in your life, and you are not defined by your performance, but you are defined by your purpose. And so find the reasons, your why, and find your purpose, and then jump into it.
Beautiful. I am just so grateful for this conversation, Alev. It is similarly, I've heard so much about you. We have the same circles, and it's such a gift to have had you on this podcast sharing your story. And I'm so grateful for you. So thank you for being here.
Likewise, AJ. Likewise.
So,
great.
Great to see you. Cannot wait to meet up in San Diego. It's going to be awesome. Thank you everyone for joining us on this episode of the Powerful Podcast. Root on Alev and the Women's Sevens team in just a few weeks in Paris. We'll see you next time. This is a reminder to check us out every Tuesday all summer long, everywhere you get your podcasts. And if you really enjoy this and don't want to miss an episode, be sure to hit that subscribe button.